3 lighthouse keepers vanished from a remote island in the North Atlantic. No distress signal, no wreckage, no bodies. When the relief ship finally arrived, the lighthouse door was closed. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed. The lamps had been cleaned and refilled. The beds were unmade. A meal sat on the table, left unfinished. But the 3 men assigned to that island were gone, and none of them were ever seen again. Welcome to History Bits Studio. Today, we examine one of the most unsettling maritime disappearances, the mystery of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. This is not folklore. It is not a ghost story. It is a documented historical event, investigated in 1900 by the Northern Lighthouse Board. Reports were filed, testimony was recorded, an official conclusion was reached. And yet, more than a century later, the silence of that island still lingers. The Flannan Isles lie roughly 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis, off the coast of Scotland. They are small, wind-beaten outcrops of dark rock rising abruptly from the Atlantic Ocean. There are no trees, no permanent settlements, no natural harbor. The islands face the full force of the North Atlantic winter storms, violent swells, and relentless wind. The largest island, Eilean Mòr, was selected in the 1890s as the site of a new lighthouse. The surrounding waters were notoriously dangerous. Shipwrecks were common, especially in heavy weather. Maritime traffic through the Hebrides was increasing, and a warning light was urgently needed. Construction began in 1896. It was slow and hazardous work. Stone blocks, iron fittings, and barrels of oil had to be lifted from supply boats onto a narrow landing. Every piece of material was hauled upward against wind and sea. When the lighthouse was first lit on December 7, 1899, it became a vital safeguard in one of Britain's most treacherous maritime corridors. From that moment on, 3 men would always be stationed there. By December 1900, the keepers on duty were experienced professionals. James Duquette, 43 years old, served as principal keeper. He was disciplined, methodical, and a husband and father of 4. Thomas Marshall, 28, was the second assistant keeper. He had previous lighthouse experience and was known for keeping careful records. Donald MacArthur, around 40, served as an occasional keeper, temporarily replacing William Ross, who was on leave. MacArthur had spent years at sea and was accustomed to harsh conditions and isolation. Life on Eilean Mòr followed strict routine. The lamps had to be trimmed regularly. Oil reservoirs were checked and refilled. The mechanism was cleaned and inspected. Weather observations were logged in detail. Routine was not optional. On an isolated island surrounded by unpredictable ocean, routine meant control, and control meant survival. The final confirmed log entries were made in mid-December 1900. Some historical sources suggest the last full entry was dated December 13th, with meteorological observations recorded up to December 15th. What is certain is that by the evening of December 15th, the lighthouse light was no longer visible. In later years, stories circulated about dramatic diary entries describing violent storms and frightened men. However, those specific passages do not appear in surviving official records and are widely considered later embellishments. The verified documents show routine notes, wind direction, sea state, maintenance work, nothing extraordinary. Then silence. On December 15th, the steamer Arctur passed near the Flannan Isles. Crew members observed that the lighthouse light was not shining. Communication in 1900 was slow. The report was delivered after the ship reached port. Severe weather in the region delayed the scheduled relief vessel. It was not until December 26th, 11 days later, that the ship Hesperus reached Eilean Mòr. Captain James Harvey attempted to signal the island. He sounded the whistle. He fired a rocket into the sky. No one responded. No keeper appeared at the landing. No signal came from the tower. relief keeper Joseph Mòr volunteered to go ashore. He later described the atmosphere as deeply unsettling. The compound gate was closed. The lighthouse door was shut. Inside, everything appeared orderly. The lamps had been cleaned and prepared. The beds were unmade, suggesting recent use. A meal sat unfinished on the table. One chair stood slightly out of place. The wall clock had stopped. On the rack where heavy oilskin weathercoats were stored, only 2 remained. One was missing. That detail suggested that at least one of the men had stepped outside, possibly in haste. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no overturned furniture. Beyond the single displaced chair, only absence. Investigators soon examined the western landing platform, the lower access point for unloading supplies. There, they found visible signs of damage. A large storage box had been smashed apart. Iron railings were bent. A thick rope had been torn from its fastening. The landing platform stood nearly 100 feet above sea level. Under normal conditions, waves would not reach that height. But the North Atlantic is not governed by normal conditions. Under extreme winter storms, waves can rise to heights comparable to a 4-story building. When that mass of water strikes exposed rock, the force is immense. It can move heavy equipment, it can bend iron, and it can sweep a person away in seconds. The investigation was led by Robert Muirhead of the Northern Lighthouse Board. After reviewing the physical evidence, he reached a practical conclusion. The men likely descended to the western landing to secure equipment during rough weather. Perhaps 2 went down first. A powerful wave struck unexpectedly and swept them into the sea. The third keeper, realizing what had happened, may have rushed down to assist and was taken as well. The explanation required no conspiracy, no mutiny, no foreign vessel, no supernatural force, only timing and the raw power of the Atlantic. No bodies were ever recovered. The waters surrounding the Flannan Isles are cold, turbulent, and fast-moving. Strong currents flow westward into deep Atlantic waters. In December, survival time would have been measured in minutes. If the sea took them, it left little trace behind. In the decades that followed, speculation filled the silence. Stories of madness, foreign ships, disputes between the men. Even supernatural explanations found their way into popular imagination. But none are supported by credible historical evidence. What remains is something quieter and perhaps more sobering. 3 experienced professionals, an exposed island, and a moment when preparation was not enough. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse still stands today. It has long since been automated. No keepers remain. Its beam continues to sweep across the dark Atlantic waters, just as it did in 1900. Ships still pass those cliffs. Storms still rise from the horizon. Waves still crash against the rock. But the memory of December 1900 remains. James Duquette, Thomas Marshall, Donald MacArthur. They reported for duty on a remote island, doing a job that required discipline, precision, and trust. They vanished in the course of that duty. Was it simply a tragic accident, a rogue wave at the wrong moment, or is there still a detail lost to time? The lighthouse still stands, but the silence endures. And sometimes, history is not defined by what we know, but by what we never find. This was History Bits Studio.